Around late 2020, I had more free time than I ever did in my entire life. Quarantine had given me the opportunity to go through every single show I'd put down on my watch list, so I'd taken the time to delve a lot deeper into mediums like anime and manga as well. But eventually, I found myself exhausting my options and running out of things to consume. I completed everything I wanted to and didn't really have anything else to look into. And that's when this little known gem called Jujutsu Kaisen dropped. I was instantly engrossed, watching every single episode as soon as they came out and counting down the days until the next one. The moment the anime finished airing, I was immediately onto the manga, going through hundreds of chapters in like 3 days. What got me interested, beyond the realistic character personalities and the phenomenal animation by MAPPA, was definitely the power system. A blend of every possible thing I would want to see from one. It was as if Gege Akutami had somehow reached into the crevices of my brain and pulled out the penultimate shonen experience. A power system so well crafted that even now, 4 years after getting into the series, I still find myself thinking about all the possibilities that could be achieved with it. And that is because every single power system trope within Jujutsu Kaisen is used right and wonderfully. So, for the uninformed, what is a power system? If you've been in the manga and anime space for any amount of time, you've probably heard that word thrown around before, usually in reference to the abilities used within a series. Basically, a power system are the rules and laws that define abilities within the fictional world. They define what abilities can and can't do, what they may be, and their advantages and drawbacks. Think of quirks from My Hero Academia or jutsu from Naruto, though it should be noted, like in the case of Haki and Devil Fruits from One Piece, a world may have multiple power systems that interact with each other in certain ways. Power systems have existed since the very beginning of manga and anime, so it only makes sense that eventually some patterns or tropes would begin to pop up within these worlds that authors are trying to create. Some of these are good enough to completely revolutionize a series' power system, adding a unique layer of narrative depth or possibility into their fights, in a way that both satisfies and engages the audience at the same time. Equally, some of these are bad enough to flat out ruin the vast majority of fights within a series, squandering the possible complexity and unpredictability that these fights could hold in favor of a more generic, safe, or boring option. In this video, I'll be covering some power system tropes that can completely enrich their world, being a joy to watch and experience if implemented correctly, and also those which only seem to detract from the power system they're added onto, usually due to how formulaic, boring, or just flat out unenjoyable they are. Before I begin, if you regularly watch my stuff or just enjoy the video, help me out by subscribing. It's completely free and you'll be supporting my small little channel a ton just by doing so. Anyway, on with the video. Also, my voice might be a bit off. I'm a bit sick, but it won't be too bad. So, what are examples of some good tropes? Well, let me start you off with one of my very favorites, equivalent exchange. The basic principle of equivalent exchange is that in order to gain A, you must sacrifice an equal and opposite amount of B. But what the hell does that yap mean? Say, for example, a character wanted to increase their overall physical strength. In a lot of anime, they could do some training, maybe unlock a new ability, but nothing's actually lost in the process. But another, perhaps more satisfying approach would be to force the character to sacrifice something equally as important, say their physical durability, in order to gain this strength. This presents you with the writing opportunity to develop a glass cannon rather than the basic strongman archetype, leading to more possibilities in terms of strategy and fight execution. This is the main draw of equivalent exchange. It forces characters to work around limitations and disadvantages in order to gain the upper hand in other aspects of a fight, allowing for more interesting and well-deserved victories. Hunter x Hunter is the pioneer of this principle. It follows that the more powerful an ability is, the more restrictions the user must impose on themselves for using it. Kurapika, for example, is capable of completely nullifying the abilities of his opponent, allowing him to defeat foes several times stronger than he is. The trade-off, though, is that he can only use this power against a group consisting of only 13 members at any given time. If he uses it against anyone else, he dies instantly. You can see the kind of cold narrative potential such an interesting rule to his ability creates, allowing for a main character to fight on the same level of incredibly strong antagonists without feeling like BS or subpar writing. Another great example is Full Metal Alchemist, which bases its entire power system on the concept of equivalent exchange. Alchemists must follow two basic rules when using their powers. 1. Energy and mass cannot be created nor destroyed, and 2. The basic makeup and properties of a material must remain intact after a transmutation. This turns alchemy from just a do-it-all magic like most other power systems to a science, which is bound by rules and the laws of nature, enriching the depth of the fictional world. There are countless more examples of this, like binding vows in Jujutsu Kaisen, which force negative emotions on the user, which in turn strengthen their cursed energy, which is again fueled by these negative emotions, a rather intuitive and satisfying system function. Or like devil contracts in Chainsaw Man, which force humans to sacrifice something to their devils in order to gain their power. Basically, equivalent exchange allows power systems to operate on a system of fairness, giving authors a chance to write in situations that feel more narratively satisfying than simply gaining a win-it-all power with no drawback, while also allowing them to add a deeper sense of realism and logic to their world. Another great trope is what I'd call power system fuel or energy. These are essentially the fuels that characters use to utilize their abilities, and they have to be managed like a resource to gain the most potential benefit when within a battle. In a similar-ish vein to equivalent exchange, characters must approach battle with a certain level of strategy when it comes to using this resource. Do they want to go all in and bombard the enemy with their strongest, highest costing techniques? Or do they gradually want to build up, keeping the fight longer yet maintaining their reserves? And a great way of displaying a character's strength is just how much of this fuel they have access to. Usually, those with great amounts of it are depicted with a literal aura around them, letting the audience know when either side of a battle is outmatched. This can lead to moments of immense hype for the audience when an ally appears with such a power, but also moments of incredible despair when a villain appears with that same aura. Equally, this can lead to incredibly satisfying underdog narratives when a character with much less of this fuel ends up defeating another due to more efficient or tactical use of it. Now, leading in from the previous trope, this one is almost an evolution of it. That is the application of this resource as actual energy, which has basic yet useful applications outside of just fueling their attacks. Many series will allow for the basic use of this energy to boost physical abilities by channeling it into one's body internally as a way to explain why these seemingly human individuals are capable of such incredible superhuman feats. However, while this can be interesting, this trope really becomes special when authors apply this basic application to more creative and niche uses. Like in Naruto, for example, chakra can be used not only as a baseline for all jutsu, but can also be used to anchor one's feet to objects, allowing the user to walk on water or climb vertically up walls. This massively diversifies the kind of battles characters can have in the series, as they fight over massive lakes or on the sides of walls or hills. Nen from Hunter x Hunter is another impressive case of this. Besides being the baseline for each unique ability in the series, Hatsu, which is what allows Nen practitioners to use their powers, is only one of 11 unique applications of one's Nen. Besides this, the user can hide their presence, encase objects in their aura, or even concentrate all of their aura into a specific body part for a powerful attack. This makes the power system more varied and interesting, as outside of the unique abilities each character has, there are also characters who display unique applications of these baseline uses of Nen, like Nobunaga, who hasn't displayed a unique ability yet, but is just insanely good at using N. And then we have Jujutsu Kaisen, which might be one of the best applications of this I've seen. While it's true that 80% of a source's potential emerges from their curse technique, just being able to expel cursed energy when striking with physical attacks massively boosts the damage one can do with them. If timed correctly, one has the chance to land a critical blow, a Black Flash, which raises the potency of the user's attack by a power of 2.5, allowing Yuji, the main protagonist, to defeat countless enemies within the series with only the basic applications of cursed energy and his physical ability. All of these tropes are good for the same reason. They allow authors to massively increase the depth of the battles and fights the protagonists may find themselves in, opening up a significant avenue for strategy and dynamics that force both characters and the writer to come up with creative workarounds for their conflict. This is what makes these good tropes, the basic fact that they make stories more interesting to read. On the other hand, however, there are tropes that only take away from the possible depth of the power system they're in. simplifying battles down to be predictable and unengaging due to how flat and one-dimensional they are. That isn't to say these tropes are automatically bad when inserted into a story, but in most cases, the author needs to put in that extra effort to make these at least bearable. One of the tropes I dislike the most are generic energy projectiles. Basically, powers that can be simplified to releasing energy blasts that usually explode on contact. Due to the extremely basic nature of these abilities, fights can be summarized to who can launch the stronger energy projectile, giving little to no avenue for counterplay or strategy. Dragon Ball did the main work in making this trope popular. However, Toriyama was capable of inserting the odd exception every now and again that kept things somewhat fresh and interesting, though I would be lying if I said I enjoyed this aspect of his fights more than I did the martial arts that were put on display. Save for maybe the Kamehameha clashes, those are pretty cool. Outside of Dragon Ball though, power systems that can be simplified to just releasing blasts of energy are often very boring on one note. It is a rather generic power with very little interesting drawbacks and battles that lack room for much creativity. Following the Dragon Ball-like trend, another trope I dislike are stat transformations. Essentially, transformations that do nothing else for the character besides increasing their physical abilities. No fancy gimmicks, no new moves unlocked, just pure strength added on. Now, I know it looks as if I just hate the Dragon Ball power system, but I assure you that isn't the case. Toriyama was a pioneer and people have been inspired by him, and he was capable of making most of his transformation staples within the series, holding a decent amount of emotional weight and narrative payoff that kind of excuses their simple nature. And sometimes they'd even have interesting side effects to them. The only ones that weren't really that interesting, I'd say, were probably Super Saiyan 3 and maybe Super Saiyan Blue. And what Toriyama got right was the fact that a transformation usually represented a massive turning point, not just within the character, but within their entire arc as a whole. It is within the name, transformation, and I believe they are used best when indicating a massive change within a character's situation or mindset. Ichigo's Hollow Mask, for example, conceptually is very well executed. He must learn to conquer it by literally defeating his inner hollow, then siphoning its strength to further bolster his own. And at first, while mostly just an addition to his strength, the aspect of his personality becoming darker and more violent alone made the transformation more interesting. However, the aspect on his personality changing is eventually completely forgotten, as is usually the case with these types of transformations, and his Hollow Mask simply becomes a buff that he usually puts on top of another buff. Man, why do protagonists always get such boring ass powers? Another series that gets this wrong is My Hero Academia. One for All starts off extremely interesting, a physical ability so powerful that it literally rips apart the user's body when used. It is striking and immediately gets the viewer's attention, watching Deku go through his fingers like bullets. However, it is inevitable that he gains more control over this power in the form of a transformation called Fukaling, and this is, to be brief, one of the most boring transformations in all of modern shonen. The introduction is so forgettable, and its effects aren't impressive enough to be memorable. It has almost no drawbacks if kept at a low output, and does very little to show an actual change in the arc of the character. I really hate Fukaling. Now, Gon's full adult transformation, on the other hand, is the complete opposite of this. Yes, it is an increase in physical ability and non-output alone, albeit an incredibly immense one. However, the inclusion of both equivalent exchange and the sheer narrative depth makes this transformation so much more engaging. Gon doesn't just get angry, then achieve a transformation for free. In order to reach this new level of strength, he must quite literally sacrifice all of the potential he could ever hold in exchange for defeating his enemy then and there. And this level of sacrifice says a lot about Gon's character, showing how much he is willing to lose in order to enact his own twisted sense of justice, as Gon has been shown to have an almost psychotic mindset at times, and this is one of the best presentations of it. The simple addition of a sacrifice and ties into the character makes this one of the most narratively compelling and recognizable transformations in all of shonen, and I wish more stories took this much of a creative approach to their transformations, rather than making them permanent, convenient, and non-costly increases in strength. And now, my most hated trope of all has to be the power of friendship. Functionally, it is the complete opposite of equivalent exchange, in that rather than having characters actually sacrifice anything or have any effort to gain strength, they simply overcome the challenge presented ahead of them to just sheer willpower or the feels from their friends. This can rarely be executed decently, but the vast majority of the time it is cheesy and boring writing to get characters out of difficult situations. And that is why I will never watch Fairy Tail. Even if someone were to kidnap me and begin waterboarding me to watch a single episode of that show, I would much rather endure the torture than consume a single episode of that Munchkin slop. The OST does slap though, so it's alright. The bottom line though is that, truthfully, there's no trope that will make or break a story. A series doesn't automatically become great because it has one of the good ones, or become bad because it poorly executes the bad ones. Mostly, it's all about the creativity added into the mix. Take things from your own approach and add your own peculiarities, and any trope in any story can be great. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like, and it also helped me a bunch if you subscribe too. It's free, and 0.01% of my viewers are actually subscribed, so hey, let's get that ratio higher. Anyway, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.